One day, Emily would understand that love can also be stitched into fabric. For years, my fingers had bled over other people's wedding gowns, silk, satin, imported lace, the dreams of women who could afford what I never would. While sewing their veils, I imagined my own daughter's wedding day, dreaming of the dress I would make for her. I wanted it to be the most beautiful gown in the world, not because of its cost, but because it would hold the one thing I always had in abundance: love. When Emily turned 15, I managed to buy her first brand new dress, not secondhand, not patched, but truly new. It was soft sky blue, with a delicate white ribbon I embroidered on the chest. That night, I watched her spin across the living room, laughter filling the tiny apartment. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "You're the best mom in the world." Those words became a treasure I carried in my heart. Years later, those words echoed back to me like a hollow promise. Emily changed. College in the city, scholarships I fought for, and new people shaped her into someone I barely recognized. She stopped calling me mom. Instead, it was mother, formal, distant. Her voice carried annoyance, sometimes thinly veiled disdain. One day, she said without looking at me, "I wish you'd had the chance to get an education." It cut deeper than any blade. Without realizing it, she had declared my love insufficient, my hands, once her whole childhood, worthless. Yet, when she announced her engagement, I felt a rush of innocent joy. I thought I could give her the gift I had imagined for years, her wedding dress. She hesitated but accepted my offer, and I took it as a fragile hope for reconciliation. That night, I prayed at my sewing machine, "Guide my hands, let every stitch carry a blessing." I chose the fabrics carefully: ivory lace, soft tulle, and small pearls left from other clients. Every fold, every seam held a quiet wish, every hidden stitch carried a tear. Inside the lining, unseen by anyone, I stitched a piece of my own wedding gown. It was my way of saying, "Take me with you, daughter. Even if you no longer see me, I am there." But when the gown was finished and Emily rejected it, it wasn't just fabric she discarded. She threw away my story, my love, the invisible thread that had bound us together. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the silent hum of the machine and thought of my mother, who had taught me that women like us have no swords or fortunes, our power lies in our hands. I realized then that my strength was not in her approval but in continuing to weave my own life, even if it was unraveled repeatedly. I touched the worn, discarded fabric again. Every seam held the pulse of my love, every stitch a memory of hugs returned with silence, of moments I had been ignored, of quiet tears hidden in bedrooms. Pain, stitched with patience, could transform. In the following days, I began sewing, not for Emily, but for myself. Each motion healed me. The machine understood my determination. I wasn't embroidering a gown anymore, I was embroidering my freedom. And though Emily didn't know it, I had a plan. On her wedding day, she would wear her chosen dress, but the one she scorned would be remembered. The morning arrived with a gray sky, heavy with a sense of something about to break. I wore my modest cream dress, the one I had donned for my mother's funeral, carefully pinned my hair, not to impress, but to meet the past with my head held high. I tucked the restored gown into a crisp white linen bag, guarding it like a secret. It was neither a gift nor a complaint. It was a statement, a silent response to a daughter who had forgotten what it means to love without shame. The wind was sharp as I walked to the bus stop, clutching the bag like my own heart. On the ride, I remembered when we had been inseparable, laughing, hugging, sharing moments without fear. Those memories now pierced sharper than any needle. The ballroom was enormous, gilded with soaring ceilings and sparkling chandeliers. Exotic flowers, polished glasses, laughter echoing everywhere. Emily stood at the center, radiant in her expensive gown, but her eyes were cold. Her smile faltered when she noticed me. I moved toward her, but a woman, presumably the groom's mother, stepped forward with a tight smile. "You must be Emily's mother," she said. I nodded. "Lovely to meet you," she added, though her tone betrayed her judgment. "Please wait back here for the family photos." I obeyed, feeling the same silent scrutiny I had endured for years. I stayed near the curtains, a quiet shadow in the celebration of my own blood. During the ceremony, no one acknowledged me. Some offered faint pleasantries, others ignored me completely. Emily never introduced me. I was not her mother that day. I was a memory she wished to hide. When the music began, the couple danced, applause erupted. I clapped too, hands trembling, not with emotion, but with contained resolve. I watched Emily embrace her new husband, proud and haughty, as if the world now belonged entirely to her. For a moment, I wondered if she had forgotten who lifted her when life tried to break her, who taught her to rise, who stitched her first dress, who traded tears for hope. And then I realized, she hadn't forgotten. She had only chosen to deny it. Sometimes, love hurts so much you bury it rather than accept it. I stayed a little longer, not to watch, but to observe. I wanted to understand the moment my daughter had drifted so far from me. A bridesmaid approached, smiling awkwardly. "Can I get you anything, ma'am?" "Just watching," I replied. "Watching what?" "How a mother becomes invisible," I said quietly. The young woman's gaze dropped, unsure how to respond. I smiled softly, there was no anger in my voice, only a deep, ancient sadness no longer searching for blame. When the clock struck midnight, and the music drowned all conversations, I rose and walked toward the center of the ballroom. In my hands, the dress. Eyes followed me one by one until the murmuring stopped. Emily turned, her face paling. "Mom, what are you doing?" she whispered. "Please, sit," I said. "I've come to return something that belongs to me." I held up the white linen bag. A ripple ran through the room, curious whispers, a few gasps. I opened it carefully and drew out the gown, the one she had once sneered at as fit for a poor person. But it was no longer the same. Tiny crystals caught the light, the lace gleamed like it had been touched by angels. The dress shone, a gown worthy of a queen. Silence swallowed the room. Emily stepped back, tears brimming. What is this?" she whispered, trembling. "This is your mother's dress, the one you rejected," I said softly. "But it's not just a dress anymore. It's a story, a lifetime of love, nights without sleep, years I refused to give up. Every thread carries my history, every stitch my name." Emily hid her face in her hands. "Mom, please stop." "No," I said. "Stop is what I told myself when I saw your shame for me. Today, I'm not here to complain. I'm here to remind you of where you come from." Slow applause began, tentative at first, then growing. Guests, bridesmaids, even Margaret, the groom's mother, all clapped. Emily fell to her knees, crying. I looked at her with serenity, not pride, not anger. I cupped her face in my hands and whispered, "There's no shame in being humble. The shame is forgetting who taught you to fly." She nodded through her tears. She reached for a hug, but I stepped back. "Not yet," I said. "Not until you understand what it truly means to love." I turned, the dress in my hands, walking through the applause. Each step was a farewell, each glance a scar closing. Something had ended forever. That night, the ballroom lights reflected in the lace, giving it an almost supernatural glow. Outside, silence wrapped the street. I walked slowly home, each step like a stitch, closing a wound that had never fully healed. I didn't cry, my heart ached, not from sorrow, but from exhaustion. Back at home, I hung the gown before the mirror. Beautiful, too beautiful for contempt. But inside, hidden within the layers of tulle and lace, were pieces of my soul. Weeks before, when I rescued it from the trash, I had transformed it into a silent letter. Small handwritten notes, carefully folded, stitched into the lining. In one, I wrote, "When you were born, I thought life had returned what it had taken. I never imagined love could hurt so deeply." Another recalled her first homemade dress. "I didn't know someday you would be ashamed of the love that sheltered you." And in the smallest note, a line my mother had whispered, "The thread that binds a mother and daughter never breaks. It stretches until one learns to let go." I didn't know if Emily would ever read them. I didn't know if she would open the dress. But I stitched them anyway. Sometimes, words must be sown to blossom when silence is no longer enough. 3 days later, there was a knock at the door. Emily stood there, pale, her eyes red, her voice unsteady. "Mom, can we talk?" I paused, weighing the moment. For a heartbeat, I wanted to embrace her, but something inside told me to wait. "Of course," I replied, calm, ready for whatever would come next. Emily walked in slowly, as if she feared the house might reject her too. She sank into the chair where she had spent countless hours waiting while I finished sewing her uniforms, dresses, and dreams. In her hands, she carried the gown. She placed it on the table without looking at me. "Open it," she said. I did. "I found your letters," she whispered, her ragged breath filling the room. For the first time, I saw vulnerability. The proud, distant woman from the wedding was gone. My little girl returned, if only for a moment. "I didn't know," she murmured. "I didn't know how much you did for me." I lowered my gaze. "You didn't need to. Mothers don't count stitches. We just sew." "I was such a fool, Mom." "No, daughter," I said. "You were human. Pride is inherited too, just like the color of your eyes." Emily broke down, kneeling beside me as she had when she was small. She took my hands, trembling like mine once did. "Forgive me," she whispered. "You don't need forgiveness," I said softly. "You need understanding." We stayed like that, wordless. I didn't cry. Forgiveness, when genuine, brings relief, not pain. Emily rested her head in my lap, and for a moment, I felt the warmth of her childhood, the same fragile trust. After a while, she lifted her head. "Can I stay with you for a few days?" she asked. "Of course," I said with a small smile. "But you'll have to earn your keep, sewing, sweeping, cooking, living." That night, we ate together for the first time in years. The silence wasn't awkward anymore, it was warm, necessary. "I always thought you were weak," she said suddenly. "Now I see, you were just tired." "Yes, daughter," I replied, smiling. "Love can tire you too." The next day, while Emily slept, I carefully stored the gown in a wooden box. Not as a trophy, but as proof that even fractured bonds can be mended if one has the courage to accept scars. Before closing it, I tucked in a note: "Humility isn't inherited. It's learned. And you've made your first stitch." The box went into the closet beside my threads, needles, and remnants of the blue fabric from her 15th birthday dress. Everything that had been my life now rested in that quiet corner. For the first time in years, I felt peace, not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of a soul sewn whole. The days Emily spent with me passed differently than anything we had shared before. Breakfasts, conversations, and shared silences returned. She sat by the window as I sewed, awkwardly joining in, pricking her fingers and laughing when the thread slipped. It felt like seeing my little girl again, the one who always said, "Why are your dresses the prettiest, Mom, even if they don't sparkle?" But peace is fragile. One afternoon, as we washed dishes together, the phone rang. Emily answered, her face changing instantly. "It's Vanessa Ellington," she murmured, voice low. Her husband's mother. The same woman who had looked at me like hired help at the wedding. Emily listened, nodding nervously. She wants to come for dinner, Emily said after hanging up. She says it's important, for both of us. Then let her come, I said firmly. But let her come with the truth, not just politeness. That night, I didn't sleep. Something about Vanessa felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. I spent hours cleaning, polishing, preparing a modest dinner, not to impress, but because manners are never lost, even if others forget them. At 8, the doorbell rang. Emily opened it, and Vanessa entered, wrapped in an elegant coat, perfume heavy enough to hide the past. "Good evening," she said, barely glancing at me. "Good evening," I replied. "Please, come in." We sat at the table. Silence stretched until Vanessa finally spoke. "You may not remember me," she said. "No, ma'am," I answered. "But memory doesn't forget voices that wound. Yours at the wedding is still clear." Emily pressed her lips together. Vanessa sighed, lowering her gaze. "You're right. I came for that reason." A pause. Only the clock ticked. Then she spoke again. "Years ago, my mother employed a seamstress who was unmatched in skill, yet charged little. I was arrogant, impatient, and often treated her with contempt. I demanded miracles, made her wait, sometimes didn't pay her. One day, she disappeared. I later learned she had been widowed, with a little girl. My hands froze when I realized. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. That woman was you." For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Memories of that tailor shop, the young woman I had once been, and the small, waiting hands of my child returned with vivid clarity. "Yes, it was you, Mrs. Ellington," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "The same woman who humiliated me over a single mistake and dismissed me without pay." Vanessa nodded. "I know," she said softly. "I didn't know," I murmured. "I did," she replied. "The night of the wedding, when I saw you holding that dress in the ballroom, I realized who you were. I didn't have the courage to approach you then, shame felt heavier than gold." Emily froze. "You worked for her mother." "Yes," I said. "And it was from her words that I learned never to let anyone humiliate me again." Vanessa bowed her head. "I came to ask for your forgiveness, Claire. You can't imagine how much guilt I've carried all these years. I thought wealth made me better, but that night I saw the truth. I spent my life admiring silently what I never had, dignity." Emily's eyes filled with tears. I took a steadying breath, looking at the woman who had caused me so much pain, and for the first time, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone, like my daughter, trapped by pride and misunderstanding. "Forgiveness isn't spoken in words, Mrs. Ellington," I said quietly. "It's shown through deeds." "I know. That's why I'm here," she said. "And what would you want me to do now?" "Help." "Help you with what?" "Open your own studio." Emily blinked in surprise. "My own studio?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "With your talent, you can teach women like you once were. I can provide the capital, not to soothe my conscience, but to use what I once wielded to humiliate for good." I studied her. Part of me wanted to reject the offer, to say forgiveness cannot be bought with money. But the wiser part, the part that had learned to mend wounds, whispered that accepting help can also be an act of self-love. "All right," I said finally. "I accept, but on one condition." "Anything," Vanessa said. "The studio will carry my mother's name." "Hope?" Emily asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said. "Because hope was the only thing I never lost." Emily stood, hugging me tightly. "Mom, I can't believe it." "Believe it, daughter," I said. "Life doesn't always offer revenge, but it moves in circles. And sometimes, the lessons of a seamstress are the ones that teach even queens how to mend their souls." Vanessa nodded, tears in her eyes. You're right. Money runs out. Dignity is inherited. Humility is earned. The dinner ended in a quiet that felt whole. Before leaving, Vanessa squeezed my hand. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for having the courage to return, I replied. Emily looked at me with pride. Mom, I didn't know you were so strong. No, daughter, I said. I'm not strong. I just learned that the firmest stitches are made after you've been broken. That night, I slept restlessly. It wasn't guilt or excitement, it was instinct. Something about Vanessa's words felt off. Too much interest, too much remorse, too late. Before dawn, I rose. The air smelled of damp earth. Birds sang distantly. I poured a cup of coffee, opened the dress box, and ran my fingers over the lace and the hidden notes I had stitched into the lining. My mother's voice whispered in my memory, "Truth's daughters are not searched for. They are unsewn." I didn't know why, but those words stayed with me all day. A week later, Vanessa returned with documents and a carefully rehearsed smile. I have the studio contract, Claire, she said. So soon? I asked. I don't want to waste time, she said. I've been thinking about all of this. Let's sit. Emily watched us, her face a mixture of joy and confusion. Vanessa unfolded the papers, loans, machinery, employees. I nodded, but a subtle tension lingered in her tone. It's not just regret, is it? I asked. Rush, she said. No, I just want to do things right. I'm not talking about the studio. I mean you. I met her gaze. You're hiding something. Her face paled. Hands trembling, she began. 30 years ago, my mother had more than seamstresses. She had secrets. I was young, reckless. Comfortable, yet empty. Then I met a man. A chill ran through me. Somehow, I knew who she meant. Kofi Bakery, she said, and my throat tightened. Zuri's eyes widened. What are you saying? I whispered. I should have told you years ago, Vanessa continued, tears streaming. Your husband worked at my mother's shop before he married you. He was noble, quiet, and I fell in love with him. Zuri gasped. I never interfered after you married him, Vanessa said. But when he died, I was there. I arrived too late. I saw them moving him, and he held an envelope, addressed to you, Claire. My vision blurred. For years, I had believed David left nothing, that his death had been as silent as it was sudden. An envelope? I whispered. Vanessa nodded, reaching into her purse and carefully pulling out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. I've held on to this for a long time, she said softly. I didn't know if I should give it to you. I thought you'd hate me. But after the wedding, I knew I couldn't keep it any longer. My hands shook as I took it. The paper was fragile, edges frayed, but the handwriting inside was unmistakable, firm, deliberate, and achingly familiar. Claire, it read, if you are reading this, it means I never had the chance to say what needed to be said. I was far from perfect, as a husband, as a father, but there is something you don't know. Before you, I made mistakes. One of them has followed me until today. If a woman named Vanessa Ellington ever comes into your life, do not hate her. Just tell her you forgive her, because she, too, was caught in the same pride that bound me. The paper slipped from my hands. Emily bent to pick it up, reading in silence, tears tracing her cheeks. I looked at Vanessa, who sat trembling, hands folded in her lap, her eyes brimming with tears. For the first time, everything aligned, the humiliation, her remorse, her insistence on making amends. It wasn't guilt alone. It was redemption. My mother destroyed many lives, Claire, Vanessa sobbed. And I followed in her shadow, until that night in the ballroom, when I saw you holding your gown. I realized I needed to make amends for the sins I inherited. I rose slowly, feeling neither anger nor resentment, just a quiet sadness. Life has a way of reweaving threads we once cut in anger. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. It wasn't the right time, she replied. Forgiveness is not asked for until you can meet the person you wronged face to face. Emily trembled, starting to speak. Then my father. No, daughter, I interrupted gently. That has nothing to do with you. Your father was mine, and his past is not yours to carry. I drew Emily into my arms, the first hug we'd shared in decades. It felt as though we were closing a wound that had bled silently for years. Vanessa, I said, finally, if your goal was forgiveness, it has been given. We don't need anything more. The studio can move forward, not to erase guilt, but to teach women that the past isn't undone by wealth or apologies, only by purpose. She nodded, wiping her tears. Thank you, Claire. And if you truly want to honor your husband's memory. Wounds aren't hidden beneath silk, I said. They're mended with truth. That night, after Vanessa left, Emily leaned against me, gazing out the window. Mom, everything you endured, it was for love, wasn't it? Yes, daughter, I whispered. Not just for your father, but for you. Because a mother's love doesn't need applause. She rested her head on my shoulder, and in that quiet, I understood, justice sometimes comes not with vengeance, but with peace, the peace that truth brings. A week later, a letter arrived, addressed in elegant, old-fashioned script, Claire Dawson. My heart skipped. Years had passed since I last saw my married name in print. David had left me in silence and absence, but now, even from beyond, he seemed to speak again. Inside, a sealed envelope and a small, wax-sealed brown packet waited. Emily watched me, concern in her eyes. Mom, are you okay? I don't know, I whispered. But it seems he didn't take everything with him. I opened the letter first. His words, though written long ago, carried warmth, as if his voice lingered through time. Claire, if you are reading this, it means I could not finish telling you all that mattered in life. I never knew how to ask forgiveness with words, but you always understood silence. I hope you can read between the lines of this letter. I leave you more than money, I leave you the truth. Enclosed are documents for an account I never told you about. It is not much, but it is earned, honest, and for you and Emily, so you never depend on pity. And there is more, a journal. In it, I wrote everything I couldn't say, everything I learned watching you love, even when you were unloved in return. If you remember me, remember us in the stitches we shared. I felt my chest tighten. Emily hugged me as I opened the brown envelope, revealing the leather-bound journal. Its corners were worn, pages filled with David's handwriting, sometimes neat, sometimes chaotic. Early entries spoke of our days together, our laughter in the studio, the way my sewing made him feel at home. Later pages grew dark, tracing guilt, frustration, and fears of inadequacy. Finally, in his last entries, he wrote, "If you ever feel alone, Claire, look for the red thread. It is in the drawer where you kept our old fabrics." That thread was the first one you used for Emily's first dress. I kept it. I never told you, but when I saw it, I remembered why everything was worth it. That thread, my love, still connects me to you. That night, I retrieved the old wooden box holding antique fabrics, and there it was, the red thread, worn but vibrant, the same I used to mend Emily's christening gown and my own wedding veil. I held it between my fingers, tears finally streaming freely. It felt like holding the heartbeat of a lifetime, as if every memory, every triumph and loss, was braided into that single red thread. Emily woke to the sound of my quiet sobs. She found me seated on the floor, the box of fabrics open before me. "What is it, Mom?" she asked softly. I held up the thread. "It's your father," I whispered. Emily's face softened, and she wrapped me in an embrace. In that moment, I realized that love, even when flawed, leaves traces, like breadcrumbs in a dark forest. Sometimes all you need is the courage to follow them. A few days later, Vanessa arrived at the studio, bearing flowers and a cautious expression. "I came to help with the studio contract," she said. "It's unnecessary," I replied. "The studio will open, but on my terms." "Different terms?" she asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "I will not do this out of guilt or charity. I will do it out of dignity." I told her about the red thread, about David's letter, about everything. Vanessa's tears fell as she confessed, "He wrote me a letter too. I just never had the courage to read it." "Then read it," I said gently. "The dead do not rest until their truths are heard." Opening day arrived under a brilliant sun. Neighbors and women from all walks of life arrived, some with scraps of fabric, others just eager to learn. I hung the sign above the door, "Hope Studio, every stitch tells a story." As I taught, I felt my mother's presence with every careful fold, every stitch threaded. Years of hunger, silence, and perseverance seemed to coalesce in that warm hum of sewing machines, scissors, and laughter. Genuine pride coursed through me. Emily moved among the students, guiding their hands over needles and threads. "See, Mom," she said, smiling. "It all began with a dress thrown in the trash." "No, daughter," I replied. "It began long before that, with a mother who never stopped sewing, even when life pulled the threads from her hands." That afternoon, I framed the red thread. Beneath it, I wrote a simple sentence in my hand: "In the end, wounds close if you hold the needle with love." The thread now hung as a symbol, binding together generations, stories, pains, and forgiveness, a silent testament to the women who sewed their destinies with resilient hearts. That night, I opened David's journal one final time. On the last page, faded ink revealed a phrase I had never noticed before: "Love is not always sewn with thread. Sometimes it is stitched with patience, with resignation, and with the quiet hope of being understood in another life." I closed the journal and turned off the light, feeling a profound peace. I had been understood, even without words. Years passed. My hair turned silver, and my hands bore tiny scars, each telling a story of a dress, a tear, a hope mended. The studio thrived, a haven for women arriving with broken dreams and worn fabrics. They learned that even what seems irreparable can be reshaped, stitched back into life. Now, I sew not just fabric but souls. Morning light streams across the shelves of neatly rolled textiles. The scent of cotton mingles with fresh coffee and laughter. Emily teaches embroidery, pricking her fingers but smiling nonetheless. Watching her, I know the red thread David spoke of still runs quietly between us. Some mornings, she leans against me. "Mom, I've learned that sewing is praying with your hands," she says. I smile, remembering my own mother's words, repeated through generations. Love has a way of turning cycles into blessings. One Saturday, a young girl and her mother entered the studio. The girl clutched a torn, stained piece of fabric. "Do you teach sewing here?" she asked timidly. "Yes," I said, inviting them in. As we showed her the machines, her eyes caught the red thread framed on the wall. "Can that thread sew dresses too?" she asked. "No, little one," I replied gently. "That thread sews the invisible things." "Like what?" "Like broken hearts," I said. Her gaze reminded me of Emily as a child, curious and determined. Time has a way of returning what was lost, disguised with new faces, giving us another chance to care for it wisely. That evening, as I closed the studio, Emily handed me an envelope. "Mom, this came for you." The sender, the Black Women's Entrepreneurial Coalition. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Afia Bakery, your work at Hope Studio has inspired countless women. We wish to honor your dedication and courage with an award. Your story proves that dignity can be sewn stitch by stitch. Emily's tears sparkled as she hugged me. You deserve this, Mom. No, daughter, I said, smiling. We all deserve it. On the day of the event, I wore my best cream-colored dress, sewn by my own hands. Emily accompanied me. As I stepped onto the stage, years of pain seemed to unravel, leaving only resilience, love, and the quiet triumph of a life mended stitch by stitch. I am nothing more than a seamstress, I said, but over the years, I learned that no fabric is so torn it cannot be mended if you hold it with patience and faith, and the strongest thread is not the one that glimmers, but the one that endures. A long, deep applause rose from the audience, resonating in my bones. As I stepped down from the stage, I caught sight of Vanessa among the crowd. I hadn't expected her. She approached slowly, carrying a bouquet. I knew you would reach this day, Claire, she said, her smile genuine. No one accomplishes anything alone, I replied. Progress comes when you learn to sew with the hands of others. Later that night, at home, Emily waited for me on the patio with her daughter, little Naya. The child held a small piece of red thread, her eyes wide with curiosity. Look what I found at the studio, Grandma, she said, grinning. Can I keep it? I studied the thread in the moonlight, its deep red hue glowing faintly. Of course, my love. But promise me you will take care of it. Why? That thread unites the women in this family. When you hold it, you are never truly alone. Naya wound the thread carefully around her wrist, and Emily's eyes glimmered with tears. Do you think she will understand, one day? Emily asked softly. She will, I said. She'll understand when she mends her first broken heart. That's when she'll see that the red thread is more than a symbol, it is an inheritance. Over time, Hope Studio flourished. Women came from neighboring towns, some bringing scraps of fabric, others bringing silent pain, wounds invisible to the eye, betrayals, loss, harsh words from childhood. Every time, I told them the same thing. Take a torn fabric and begin sewing. If the thread breaks, I'll teach you to rethread it. Sewing is not just joining pieces, it is learning that mistakes leave patterns, and scars, like hands calloused by life, are proof of bravery. One winter, Vanessa fell ill. Emily and I visited her in her large, quiet home. She greeted us, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes gentle. I knew you would come, she said. I wanted to say goodbye. You owe me nothing, Vanessa, I replied. No, Claire, she said. You saved me from myself. Never forget that. And Emily, your mother is one of those women born once a century. Don't judge her toughness, it's her way of surviving. She passed a few weeks later, leaving a modest donation to Hope Studio. A handwritten note accompanied it. Thank you for sewing with the thread of forgiveness what I once ripped with pride. I cried, not from sorrow, but from relief. In the end, we had each played our part, she, by seeking forgiveness, and I, by learning not to carry a grudge. Now, I watch Naya on the patio, her tiny hands fumbling over the needle as she follows Emily's patient guidance. Even when she pricks her fingers, she smiles. That smile is my deepest inheritance. Life, I think, is much like fabric. It tears, it stains, it stretches, yet there is always a thread ready to mend it. I am a seamstress, a mother, a teacher. I have sewn dresses, tears, and destinies. And if I have learned anything, it is that love is not always spoken in words or hugs, it is often stitched silently, steadfastly, into the lives of those we cherish. I close my eyes and remember the night Emily called me poor and hurled my dress into the trash. Who could have imagined that act would mark the start of our healing? But it did. The deepest wounds, I realize, are not there to destroy us, they are there to let the light in. This will be my final story, my last stitch. Yet I am unafraid, for I know Emily and Naya will continue sewing with the red thread, carrying forward a legacy of love, dignity, and hope. And when the world judges them for being simple or for giving without expecting in return, they will remember my words: there is no stronger stitch than that of a woman who has wept, for she knows how to hold the needle with love. I smile, close my eyes, and let the quiet embrace me. The red thread rests on my lap, warm, vibrant, as though alive. And in that stillness, I hear my mother's voice, distant but tender: "You may rest now, daughter. The last stitch has been made." People sometimes ask if I would endure it all again, the humiliation, the tears, the silence. I always answer yes. Each wound taught me to sew with strength, every slight taught me not to beg for love, and each sleepless night reminded me that dignity is the garment no one can take away. My hands now bear the story of countless women who sewed not for pleasure, but out of necessity. Women who mended clothes, hearts, and families. Women who never waited for applause, only respect. Women who understood that value is not measured in money. Hope Studio continues to thrive. Every time a needle pierces fabric, life whispers that nothing was ever wasted. Years may pass, but the red thread remains, binding generations, love, and stories together. There are many more stories waiting on my channel. Don't miss out, subscribe and join me for the next tale, where love, respect, and resilience weave their own legacy.